"I'll give you $5,000 if you serve me in Russian," laughed the mafia boss, his voice cutting through the ambient chatter of Natasha's restaurant. His entourage snickered as he leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the young waitress whose name tag read, Anya. Anya clutched her notepad tighter, her knuckles turning white as she forced a polite smile. Behind that practiced expression was a mind racing with calculations. Rent was due in 3 days, her mother's medication costs had doubled, and her scholarship barely covered textbooks. The mafia boss, known simply as Victor, smirked at her hesitation, clearly enjoying the power imbalance. His designer suit and gold watch screamed wealth, while the bulge beneath his jacket whispered danger to anyone observant enough to notice. "I studied Russian for 4 years before dropping out to support my family," Anya replied in flawless Russian, her accent so authentic it momentarily stunned Victor. The restaurant fell silent as his smug expression transformed into one of genuine surprise. Victor's eyebrows shot up, his lips parting slightly as he registered what had just happened. The men surrounding him shifted uncomfortably, unused to seeing their leader caught off guard by anyone, especially not a server in a modest restaurant. "Come to my office tomorrow at noon," Victor said, sliding a business card across the table while maintaining intense eye contact. $5,000 as promised, and perhaps a conversation about how your talents might be better compensated. Anya took the card with trembling fingers, knowing this moment represented both opportunity and danger. The address printed on the heavy cardstock belonged to one of the city's most exclusive high-rises, a building ordinary people only admired from afar. Her manager watched nervously from across the room, already calculating the loss of his best waitress. He'd warned all his staff about Victor Krasny's visits. Be polite, be quick, and never engage beyond taking orders. The rest of her shift passed in a blur, Anya's mind replaying that moment of defiance over and over. Had she impressed a dangerous man, or had she merely painted a target on her back by revealing her linguistic abilities? Walking home that night, clutching her pepper spray, Anya thought of her mother's mounting medical bills. $5,000 would cover 3 months of treatment, buy time while she figured out a more permanent solution to their financial crisis. Her tiny apartment felt especially cramped that evening, the walls closing in as she paced the worn carpet. Taking money from a criminal crossed every moral boundary she'd set for herself, yet necessity had a way of redrawing those lines. Morning arrived after a restless night, sunlight filtering through thin curtains as Anya stared at the business card. The embossed letters seemed to pulse with possibility and danger. Victor Krasny, International Imports, followed by a phone number and address. At precisely 11:58, Anya stepped into the gleaming lobby of Horizon Towers, her second-hand clothes drawing curious glances from the security staff. The elevator ride to the 47th floor felt like ascending to another world, one where people like her were rarely welcome. "Ah, the talented waitress arrives," Victor announced as his assistant ushered Anya into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He gestured to a chair across from his imposing desk, watching her with calculated interest. An envelope slid across the polished surface, thick with cash, the promised payment for a simple exchange in her native language. "A woman of multiple talents is rare in my experience," Victor said, leaning forward with unsettling intensity. "I have a proposition that extends beyond our little restaurant bet," Victor continued, resting his chin on steepled fingers. "My organization requires someone with your linguistic abilities for some delicate negotiations with our Russian partners." Anya's fingers hovered over the envelope, moral conflict visible in her hesitation. "I'm just a waitress trying to get through college and support my mother," she replied, knowing even as she spoke that her simple life had already begun to unravel. Victor's laugh was surprisingly warm, creating a jarring contrast with the coldness in his eyes. "We all have roles we play, Anya Petrova. Yours as a struggling waitress, mine as a businessman with diverse interests spanning legal boundaries." The view from his office showcased a city divided, gleaming skyscrapers alongside neighborhoods where people like Anya fought daily for survival. The metaphor wasn't lost on her, as she reluctantly accepted both the money and his business proposition. 3 times your current salary, flexible hours around your classes, and complete coverage of your mother's medical expenses. Victor listed the terms while pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid, all for accompanying me to meetings and translating conversations correctly. Anya took a careful sip, wincing at the burn of expensive whiskey as it traveled down her throat. The offer represented everything she needed wrapped in a package she knew was dangerous to accept. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, growing thinner each day, brave smiles that couldn't mask the pain of illness and worry. What exactly would these translations involve? She asked, already suspecting the answer would blur ethical lines. Nothing that should trouble your conscience excessively, Victor replied with practiced ease, though his eyes narrowed slightly at her question. Business discussions, cultural nuances that might be lost on me despite my rudimentary Russian vocabulary. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock before a man entered without waiting for permission. Dmitri, Victor's second-in-command, cast a suspicious glance at Anya before whispering urgently in his boss's ear about shipment complications. Victor's expression darkened momentarily before he dismissed Dmitri with a casual wave. First task: dinner tonight with associates from Moscow who prefer their negotiations conducted in their mother tongue, he said, his tone making it clear refusal wasn't an option. That evening, dressed in clothes hastily purchased with Victor's advance, Anya entered the private dining room of La Belle, the city's most exclusive restaurant. 5 men turned to evaluate her with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. My new cultural attaché, Victor introduced her with a proprietary hand on her lower back that made Anya fight the urge to step away. She'll ensure our conversations lose nothing in translation this evening. The oldest Russian, a man with silver hair and cold eyes, addressed her directly in his native language. So young to be involved in our world. Does she understand what happens to people who misinterpret sensitive conversations? Anya swallowed hard, translating his words precisely for Victor while omitting the threatening undercurrent. Her first lesson in this dangerous new role was already clear. Some things were better left unsaid. Victor's smile never reached his eyes as he responded through Anya, each exchange revealing layers of meaning and hidden agendas. She was no longer just translating words but navigating a complex web of power, threats, and negotiation. 3 weeks into her new role, Anya developed a system: hospital visits with her mother in the mornings, classes when possible, and evenings spent in luxury restaurants or private clubs where Victor conducted his business. The double life was exhausting, but financially rewarding. Your daughter is glowing these days, the nurse commented to Anya's mother during a treatment session. Whatever new job you mentioned she found, it seems to be doing wonders for her stress levels. If only they knew the truth, Anya thought bitterly, as she smiled and agreed. The physical toll of her secret life was hidden beneath expensive makeup provided by Victor, who insisted his translator always appear polished and professional. In Victor's world, Anya observed a complex hierarchy that reminded her of wild animal documentaries, displays of dominance, careful challenges, and the constant threat of violence lurking beneath civil conversations. She learned to read the room before words were even spoken. You're a natural, Victor commented after a particularly tense meeting with Ukrainian suppliers went surprisingly well. Most people in your position would have cracked under pressure or tried to exploit their knowledge for personal gain. Anya recognized the statement for what it was, both compliment and warning. I'm just doing the job you're paying me for, she replied carefully, maintaining the professional distance that had so far kept her safe. The line between professional obligation and personal involvement began to blur as Victor increasingly requested her presence at events unrelated to business. My associates find you intriguing, he explained when she questioned the necessity of attending a charity gala. That night, watching Victor charm socialites and politicians with the same ease he intimidated rivals, Anya glimpsed something unexpected. Moments of genuine passion when discussing art with a museum curator, a flash of vulnerability when mentioning his childhood. He wasn't always like this, whispered Irina, the elegant wife of one of Victor's associates, noticing Anya's observation. Before his father was killed, Victor studied literature and painted, talents buried under necessity and vengeance. The information shifted something in Anya's perception, complicating her neatly categorized view of Victor as simply dangerous criminal. The realization that he contained depths beyond his fearsome reputation made her job both easier and infinitely more complicated. Her university friends drifted away, unable to relate to her vague explanations about her new job and increasingly expensive possessions. The isolation pushed her further into Victor's orbit, where at least she understood the rules, however dangerous they might be. One rainy Tuesday, Victor unexpectedly asked about her classes, displaying surprising knowledge about her literature major. Dostoevsky understood that every man contains multitudes, saint and sinner existing simultaneously, he commented while reviewing business documents. Their conversation about Russian literature continued for hours, revealing a side of Victor few were privileged to see. When he described his childhood dreams of becoming a professor before family obligations intervened, Anya recognized the shadow of regret in his voice. Perhaps in another life, Victor concluded with uncharacteristic softness, before his phone rang and his expression hardened once more. The glimpse behind his carefully constructed facade vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Later that night, lying awake in her new apartment, a security necessity according to Victor, Anya confronted an uncomfortable truth. The line separating her from the world she'd entered was thinning, and her moral objections were weakening with each passing day. The Russian lessons began unexpectedly one evening in Victor's penthouse as he struggled with pronunciation for an upcoming meeting. "Teach me properly," he demanded, pushing aside security reports to make space for language practice at his dining table. Anya discovered that Victor was a demanding but dedicated student, approaching language acquisition with the same intensity he brought to business negotiations. His frustration when unable to master certain sounds revealed a perfectionist streak that extended beyond his criminal enterprises. "My father insisted Russian was beneath us, a language for servants and enemies," Victor confessed during their third lesson. "But I always found it beautiful, especially when my nanny would sing lullabies she thought I was too young to remember." Their lessons evolved into cultural exchanges, Anya sharing stories from her grandmother, while Victor revealed fragments of his fractured childhood. The power dynamic shifted subtly during these moments, equalizing in ways that made both uncomfortable yet intrigued. During their fourth lesson, Anya discovered a small sketchbook tucked beneath business files, drawings with remarkable talent showing Moscow's skyline at dawn. Victor snatched it away with uncharacteristic embarrassment, a glimpse of artistic sensitivity at odds with his brutal reputation. "My mother was Russian," Victor revealed unexpectedly one evening, the confession emerging after 3 glasses of vodka. "Father forbade her language in our home after their marriage, a control tactic that broke her spirit years before cancer took her body." As winter deepened, their lessons moved beyond mere language to cultural immersion. Victor's chef preparing traditional Russian dishes, while Anya selected classic films from her homeland. These cultural bridges revealed commonalities neither had anticipated finding in the other. "You remind me of someone," Victor said one evening, his guard momentarily lowered after recounting a rare, happy memory. "A girl from my neighborhood who saw more in me than others did, before circumstances forced different paths." Anya carefully maintained professional boundaries despite these growing personal connections, aware of the dangers of misinterpreting their relationship. Victor might show glimpses of humanity, but his business remained built on exploitation and violence. The first time she witnessed that violence firsthand came during a routine translation assignment at the warehouse. A supplier who had shorted a shipment knelt bleeding on the concrete floor, while Dmitri stood over him with brass knuckles gleaming under fluorescent lights. "Tell him his options in his native tongue," Victor instructed calmly, as if requesting a menu translation, rather than delivering life-or-death ultimatums. "Make sure he understands exactly what failure costs in our organization." Anya's hands trembled as she relayed the message, her voice steadier than she felt. The man's terrified eyes locked with hers, pleading silently for mercy she had no authority to grant in this brutal world she'd entered. That night, alone in her bathroom, Anya scrubbed her hands until they were raw, trying to wash away the moral compromise of her participation. The salary that once seemed worth any ethical flexibility now felt heavy with the weight of complicity. The following morning, Victor appeared at her door unannounced, expression unreadable as he studied the dark circles under her eyes. "The first time is always difficult," he said simply, offering no apology but a strange acknowledgement of her distress. Instead of business, he suggested breakfast at a small bakery owned by an elderly Russian couple. There, surrounded by the familiar comfort of her culture's food and language, Anya watched as Victor charmed the owners with respectful Russian phrases she'd taught him. "Not everyone sees this side of you," Anya observed as they walked back to his car, their breaths visible in the cold morning air. "Why show it to me?" Victor's answer came after a thoughtful pause. "Perhaps because you're the only person who speaks to me in 2 languages, the one I use for business, and the one that reminds me of simpler times." The complexity of their relationship deepened when Anya's mother experienced a medical emergency, requiring experimental treatment not covered by insurance. Without hesitation, Victor arranged for a specialist from Switzerland, dismissing Anya's protests with unexpected gentleness. Dmitri's growing resentment became increasingly obvious during strategy meetings, his eyes following Anya with undisguised suspicion as her influence with Victor expanded beyond simple translation. The power shift threatened his position as Victor's most trusted advisor. "She knows too much about our operations for someone so new," Dmitri warned Victor in English, assuming Anya wouldn't understand his heavily accented words from across the room. "Your fascination with this girl compromises years of careful work." Victor dismissed these concerns publicly, but Anya noticed increased security around her apartment, and a driver suddenly available for all her commutes. Protection or surveillance, perhaps both, indicated Victor shared some of Dmitri's concerns about her role. The first sign of active betrayal came disguised as a delivery. Documents requiring urgent translation for a meeting Anya hadn't been informed about. The papers contained shipping manifests, with details far more incriminating than anything she'd previously been allowed to see. "Did Victor send these directly?" she asked the courier, instinct warning her something was wrong about the unusual delivery protocol and the sensitive nature of the contents. The man nodded unconvincingly before hurrying away. That evening, while waiting in Victor's office to clarify the translation request, Anya overheard Dmitri in the adjacent room speaking rapidly on the phone. Once she translates those documents, her fingerprints will be all over the evidence when it reaches the federal prosecutor. Realization washed over her like ice water. Dmitri was setting her up to take the fall for Victor's operation, while simultaneously removing her from his inner circle. The carefully orchestrated trap would destroy her life while preserving Dmitri's position of power. Surveillance footage from Victor's security team revealed Dmitri meeting with rival organizations, digital evidence of coordinated efforts to dismantle Victor's empire from within. The betrayal extended beyond self-preservation into active sabotage orchestrated over months. Anya discovered coded messages in the translation documents, subtle linguistic markers suggesting the information had originated from federal informants. Dmitri hadn't just betrayed Victor. He'd been working with authorities while framing her as the conduit for their investigation. Her university advisor's unexpected call added another layer of complication. The scholarship board questioning her sudden financial improvement and reduced class attendance. Dmitri's plan included undermining every aspect of her life, leaving no refuge if his plot succeeded. With trembling hands, Anya photographed the conversation calendar on Victor's desk, confirming he had no knowledge of the translation request. The betrayal targeted both of them, using her as the conduit for bringing down Victor's entire operation. Victor's unexpected early return to the office left Anya no time to escape without explanation. When he demanded to know why she was in his private office, the truth spilled out. The documents, Dmitri's phone conversation, and the elaborate setup designed to implicate them both. Initially skeptical, Victor's expression shifted as he examined the unauthorized documents and verified his schedule discrepancies. His face transformed with a cold fury that reminded Anya exactly who she'd aligned herself with in this dangerous game. "You could have taken these documents directly to the authorities to save yourself," Victor observed, studying her with new intensity. "Why warn me instead?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither was prepared to articulate. Anya's response came with unexpected honesty. "Because despite everything, I believe you would have done the same for me." Victor moved with terrifying efficiency once convinced of Dmitri's betrayal, mobilizing his most trusted men while instructing Anya to continue normal activities. "Act as though you're translating those documents," he directed, his voice devoid of the warmth she'd grown accustomed to. The trap reversed now targeted Dmitri, with Anya playing her role in the dangerous theater of loyalty and betrayal. Each translation page she pretended to complete tightened the noose around the man who had underestimated her connection to his boss. Caught between her moral compass and survival instincts, Anya made a decision that would irrevocably alter her path. She secretly copied select information from the documents before returning them. Insurance policy and potential escape route rolled into one desperate act. 3 days of excruciating tension followed, as Anya maintained her routine, while Victor's investigation into Dmitri's betrayal proceeded behind the scenes. The restaurant where everything began now felt like a distant memory from someone else's life. "Your mother's treatment is showing remarkable results," the doctor informed Anya during a routine checkup. "Whatever strings you pulled to get this specialist, it's giving her a real fighting chance." The good news twisted like a knife in Anya's conscience. Her mother's improving health purchased with moral compromise and deepening entanglement in Victor's criminal world. The price of saving one life might be her own soul. Dmitri made his move the following evening, intercepting Anya as she left the university library. "Get in the car," he ordered, revealing a concealed weapon beneath his expensive jacket. "It's time we discussed your future with the organization." The drive to an abandoned warehouse at the city's edge passed in tense silence, Anya's mind racing through possible escape scenarios. Dimitri's face remained impassive, betraying nothing of his plans beyond the obvious intent to remove her permanently. "Victor's judgment has become compromised since you appeared," Dimitri stated as he forced her into the empty building. "Sentiment is weakness in our business, something I tried to teach him repeatedly over 15 years of loyalty." Concrete floors echoed with their footsteps as Dimitri marched her toward a back office, passing empty shipping containers and forgotten machinery. The isolation confirmed Anya's worst fears. No witnesses meant no reason to keep her alive after getting what he wanted. "The documents you translated. Where are the originals?" Dimitri demanded, pressing the gun against her ribs. "Victor thinks he destroyed all evidence, but I know you're too smart to leave yourself unprotected." Anya's response was interrupted by the warehouse door crashing open, metal groaning as Victor entered with 2 armed men. His expression remained eerily calm as he assessed the standoff, eyes fixing on the weapon pressed against Anya's side. 15 years of loyalty means nothing when betrayal follows," Victor replied, advancing slowly despite the danger. "Did you think I wouldn't verify her story? That I wouldn't check the accounts you've been skimming from for years?" The revelation of deeper betrayal registered on Dimitri's face, momentary shock providing the distraction Anya needed. She drove her elbow into his solar plexus, creating precious distance between herself and the gun as she dove behind a shipping container. Gunfire erupted, bullets ricocheting off metal surfaces as Anya crawled desperately toward an exit. Victor's voice carried over the chaos, commanding his men while exchanging shots with his former lieutenant. Through the chaos, Anya spotted a fallen guard's phone, managing to send her location to the emergency contact programmed in her own device. Her literature professor, who had once mentioned counter-terrorism consultation work. Help would come, though whether before or after bloodshed claimed more lives remained uncertain. Dimitri's backup arrived, outnumbering Victor's remaining loyal men and forcing them into defensive positions behind shipping containers. The choreography of violence escalated with practiced precision, professionals executing well-rehearsed patterns of territory control and tactical advancement. A spray of bullets shattered the windows above, raining glass that sliced Anya's cheek as she army-crawled toward a maintenance door. Her literature studies felt absurdly distant, Dostoevsky's moral dilemmas exchanged for immediate survival instincts and the metallic smell of blood on concrete. A stray bullet grazed Anya's arm, hot pain blazing across her skin as she fought to remain conscious. The academic who once worried about essay deadlines now struggled to escape crossfire between warring criminals, her new reality stripped of any remaining illusion. Blood loss and adrenaline made the world tilt sickeningly as Anya finally reached a side door. The cool night air hit her face as she stumbled into the alley, survival instinct propelling her forward, despite the growing weakness in her limbs. A familiar black car screeched to a halt beside her, Victor emerging from the driver's seat with blood staining his custom suit. "It's over," he stated simply, reaching for her injured arm with unexpected gentleness. "Dimitri won't betray anyone again." The drive to Victor's private doctor passed in hazy silence, shock setting in as Anya processed how completely her life had transformed. The waitress who once dreamed of literature degrees now sat bloodied beside a man who had killed to protect both her and his criminal empire. 3 fractured ribs, mild concussion, and significant blood loss, the doctor reported to Victor while treating Anya's wounds. "She needs complete rest for at least 2 weeks. No translation work, no university, nothing stressful." Victor nodded curtly, his usual composure restored despite the violence of the preceding hours. Only the occasional glance toward Anya betrayed any concern beyond professional interest in his translator's recovery. Recovery took place not in Anya's apartment, but in a secluded lakeside property Victor claimed belonged to a distant relative. The isolation provided safety, but also forced constant proximity between patient and protector during those critical first days. "The police found Dimitri's body," Victor informed her on the 3rd morning, setting a breakfast tray beside her bed with unexpected domesticity. "Official report says gang violence. Technically accurate if not complete." Anya's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the tea, the reality of her situation crystallizing with brutal clarity. She was now witness to murder, recipient of blood money, and dependent on a criminal's protection. Lines crossed that could never be uncrossed. "My organization is vulnerable while I'm handling this situation," Victor admitted, surprising her with his candor. Dimitri's betrayal has created opportunities for rivals to move against my interests in the city. The unexpected vulnerability in this confession shifted something between them, Victor revealing weaknesses he would show to no one else. Anya recognized the dangerous intimacy developing between captive and captor, victim and protector, student and teacher. During her second week of recovery, Victor received news that his primary distribution warehouse had been seized by authorities, acting on an anonymous tip. His carefully controlled facade cracked momentarily, revealing the panic beneath his composed exterior. "They're closing in from all sides," he murmured, pacing the cabin's living room while making rapid phone calls in multiple languages. "Someone is systematically dismantling everything I've built over 20 years. Anya's suggestion came hesitantly. "Your legitimate businesses, the import company, the restaurants, the art gallery, they're still untouched. Perhaps it's time to consider transitioning completely to legal enterprises." Victor's laughter held no humor as he dismissed the idea. "My legitimate businesses exist to launder money from the others. Without the criminal enterprises, everything collapses, including my protection for you and your mother's medical care." The harsh truth hung between them, both acknowledging the toxic dependency their relationship had cultivated. Anya's moral compromise had grown from one desperate decision into a lifestyle she could no longer easily escape. Their isolation ended abruptly when an unexpected visitor arrived. Irina, the wife of Victor's associate, appeared with urgency and without her husband. "Gregory has been arrested," she announced without preamble. "They're coming for you next." Irina's proposal was shocking in its simplicity. "I have connections with federal prosecutors willing to offer immunity in exchange for specific information. Not everything, Victor, just enough to satisfy them while preserving your core assets." The proposal included an unexpected component, evidence implicating higher-profile targets that would satisfy federal authorities more than Victor's mid-level organization. Irina had compiled dossiers on politicians and corporate executives whose corruption dwarfed Victor's criminal activities. "My husband never knew my true background," Irina explained, removing an expensive wig to reveal closely cropped hair and extracting colored contacts. "Former intelligence operative repurposed to domestic monitoring. My marriage was my cover, not my identity." The revelation transformed their power dynamic instantly, Anya and Victor now recognizing they were pieces in a larger game orchestrated by invisible players. Their relationship, built on translation and cultural exchange, had inadvertently intersected with national security operations beyond their comprehension. Victor's refusal was immediate and predictable, but Anya noticed the calculation behind his eyes. For the first time since she'd known him, the unshakable crime boss was considering compromise instead of dominance or destruction. The plan formed over 3 tense days of negotiation, with Irina serving as unexpected mediator between Victor's criminal world and legitimate authorities. Limited immunity in exchange for information about international suppliers would satisfy the prosecution, while allowing Victor to preserve his domestic operations. "Why are you helping him?" Anya asked Irina during a rare moment alone. "Your husband is already imprisoned. Cooperating with Victor seems counterproductive to your own interests." Irina's smile held secrets deeper than Anya could fathom. "Gregory was never the real power in our marriage," she confessed, removing her designer sunglasses to reveal eyes sharp with intelligence. "Victor's organization benefits from my connections in ways even he doesn't fully comprehend." The revelation of this shadow player reshuffled Anya's understanding of the power dynamics she'd been observing. Women in this world weren't merely decorative accessories, but often the hidden architects behind seemingly male-dominated structures. Their carefully constructed deal collapsed when federal agents raided the lake house without warning, clearly operating on fresh intelligence that bypassed Irina's carefully cultivated channels. The negotiated surrender transformed into chaos as Victor pulled Anya through a hidden exit tunnel. "Someone betrayed us again," Victor growled, as they escaped into the surrounding forest, his hand gripping Anya's wrist with painful intensity. "Whoever's dismantling my organization knew exactly where to find us." The realization hit Anya with stunning clarity. The copied documents she'd secured as insurance had somehow reached authorities. Her well-intentioned protection strategy had accelerated the very collapse she now fled alongside Victor. Their desperate journey led them back to where everything began. Natasha's restaurant, now closed for renovation but still accessible through service entrances Victor somehow knew intimately. The familiar setting felt surreal after weeks of upheaval and violence. "We need to separate," Victor decided, his tactical mind working through limited options. "They want me, not you." If you walk away now, claim Stockholm Syndrome or coercion. Your mother's care continues through my offshore accounts. Anya's refusal surprised even herself. Running solves nothing. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Not because I approve of what you've done, but because I understand why you did it. The standoff began at midnight, when federal agents surrounded the restaurant, their negotiator's voice amplified through speakers demanding Victor's peaceful surrender. Inside, Victor and Anya sat at the same table where their story had begun months earlier. I never paid you that $5,000 from our first bet, Victor realized with unexpected laughter, the absurdity of remembering such a detail in their current circumstances breaking through the tension. You earned it fair and square with your Russian. Anya reached across the table, taking his hand in a gesture that acknowledged their complicated journey. The money was never what changed my life, she replied softly. It was discovering that people are rarely what they first appear to be. Outside the restaurant, media vans assembled alongside tactical units, cameras ready to capture the fall of a notorious criminal figure. The narrative already being constructed would flatten their complex story into simplistic headlines: villain captured, innocent saved, erasing the moral ambiguities that defined their actual experience. Through the restaurant's security feed, they watched federal agents establishing perimeter positions with military precision. They're being careful. Someone told them about my combat background, Victor observed with professional respect for their tactical approach. Anya noticed a familiar face among the federal commanders, her literature professor now revealed in body armor with credential badges. The separate worlds she'd tried to maintain had collapsed into a single narrative, academic mentor and law enforcement now converging at this climactic moment. Their moment of connection shattered as the front doors burst open, tactical teams swarming the restaurant with weapons drawn. Victor rose slowly, hands raised in a gesture of surrender that seemed foreign on a man accustomed to commanding rather than yielding. Victor Krasny, you're under arrest, announced the lead agent, reciting charges that would ensure decades of imprisonment if convicted. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists with finality as Anya watched, heart constricting, despite knowing this moment was inevitable. In his final free act, Victor turned to Anya and spoke in perfect Russian. Tell them everything, the good and the bad. My redemption was always impossible, but perhaps through your truth, something better emerges from what we built together. 6 months later, Anya sat in a federal courthouse, hands clasped tightly as she prepared to testify in Victor's trial. Her immunity deal, secured through cooperation and the documents she'd preserved, allowed her to speak freely about the organization she'd witnessed from the inside. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? The court official intoned as Anya placed her hand on the Bible. Her affirmation came clear and steady, commitment to honesty now replacing the moral compromises of her past. Victor watched her from the defendant's table, expression unreadable to most observers but conveying subtle acknowledgement to Anya. Their shared language now extended beyond Russian or English. They communicated in the silent vocabulary of two people who had seen each other's true natures. Her testimony walked the delicate line between truth and mercy, providing evidence of criminal activity while contextualizing Victor's complex character. The prosecution wanted a monster. The defense claimed coercion. Anya offered something more authentic, a flawed human caught in systems of his own making. The defendant showed capacity for both extraordinary cruelty and unexpected compassion, she concluded after hours of questioning. His organization destroyed lives through illegal activities, yet also provided medical care to my mother when legitimate systems failed her. The jury's deliberation lasted 3 days before returning with a verdict that acknowledged the complexity of the case. Victor received a 15-year sentence instead of life, punishment tempered with possibility of eventual redemption through the testimony of the waitress he'd once mocked. Natasha's restaurant reopened under new management, with Anya now holding partial ownership thanks to a legitimate business arrangement Victor had established before his arrest. The establishment became a symbol of second chances rather than criminal enterprise. Anya completed her literature degree while managing the restaurant, her thesis examining moral ambiguity in Russian classics, with insights drawn from personal experience. Professors noted her unusual depth of understanding when discussing characters who straddled worlds of darkness and light. Her mother's recovery progressed steadily, the specialized treatment having arrested the disease's progression before Victor's legitimate medical foundation continued coverage. The foundation became Anya's focus beyond academics, channeling resources toward families facing similar healthcare crises. Twice monthly, Anya visited the federal prison, conversing with Victor in both languages as he served his sentence. Their relationship defied simple categorization. Not quite friendship, beyond business, yet bound by experiences too profound to abandon. "You could have disappeared with the money," Victor observed during one visit, his face thinner but eyes still sharp with intelligence. "Instead, you built something lasting from the wreckage of my mistakes." Anya's smile acknowledged the observation's truth. "We're defined not by our worst moments or best intentions, but by what we choose to build after everything falls apart," she replied, wisdom earned through their shared journey. The restaurant hosted a weekly Russian cultural night, creating community spaces where immigrants and locals connected through language, food, and stories. Anya's initial linguistic talents had evolved into bridge building between worlds that rarely intersected peacefully. On quiet evenings, she sometimes remembered their first encounter, his arrogant challenge, her desperate acceptance of the bet. The memory no longer carried bitterness or regret, but stood as the unexpected catalyst for transformation neither could have anticipated. Victor's legitimate businesses continued operating under trusts he'd established, providing employment and stability in communities once exploited by his criminal enterprises. Redemption came not through erasing past sins, but through creating future possibilities that might balance the scales. Anya's graduation ceremony coincided with her mother's one-year anniversary of remission, twin celebrations of perseverance through seemingly impossible circumstances. As she accepted her diploma, Anya spotted Irina in the audience, a subtle nod acknowledging their shared role in reshaping a criminal empire into something with potential for good. The literature department offered Anya a teaching position focusing on translation studies and cultural interpretation, skills honed through life-threatening circumstances now redirected toward academic pursuit. Her unique perspective on language as both bridge and weapon brought unprecedented depth to the curriculum. Victor's prison correspondence included philosophical discussions that Anya incorporated anonymously into her graduate research, exploring how moral boundaries blur when survival and protection of loved ones conflict with societal laws. Their exchanges evolved into a manuscript examining ethical relativism through real-world application. International students flocked to Anya's translation workshops, unaware that her expertise derived from high-stakes negotiations where misinterpreted words carried lethal consequences. The authenticity in her teaching stemmed from experiences too complex to share yet too valuable to abandon. Thank you all for following this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is crucial for me to continue creating content here.